I was meditating, and then suddenly I find myself sitting at the edge of a pool, and I had one of my legs dangling in the pool. And then I was looking up, and it wasn't like a normal indoor pool, but like a big dome, and it had windows in the dome. And then I looked through the windows and I saw space, and it was distinctly different from just the night sky because it's like much deeper and more stars. And then I looked down on my leg that was dangling in the water, and it was like small, like thin and gray. And I looked into the pool, and there was a whale and several dolphins. And then it dawned on me that, like, oh, I'm like one of those gray aliens, and I'm sitting here on a huge spaceship that's transporting dolphins and whales.
Wow.
Welcome to the Endless Possibilities Podcast, where the journey of spiritual awakening and energy healing unfolds.
Hello and welcome to the Endless Possibilities Podcast. My name is Garrett and I'm excited that I have Erik Unger back for part two. We had a great interview where Erik went through his process of awakening and all his experiences that led him to the later stages of awakening. So today he's back and we're going to get into some paranormal experiences and other realms and astral realms. Erik, welcome back. Good to see you.
Yeah, great to be back.
Yeah,
Thank you.
so yeah, we had a great conversation last time, and yeah, so we're gonna we I think we did this a little bit backwards the last time. We agreed that we would do your experiences first and then talk about the awakening, but it happened that we just spoke about the awakening parts first, and now we're going to get into all of the experiences. So,
Well,
how would you like to start? Yeah, go ahead.
it's just the whole awakening part. It's like the more interesting part for me now, and like weird experiences with UFOs and stuff like that, which happened over 10 years ago. It's not that exciting anymore, but yeah, people like to hear that kind of stuff too.
But yeah, I'm kind of the same, right? All the phenomena kind of dies down and you don't really think about it so much. But I mean, I've been a guest on a couple of podcasts and they really are interested in hearing about my out of body experiences and my, the past life stuff. I guess people want to know about it. So yeah, so where would you like to start today, Erik?
Yeah, maybe with some recent stuff. So you have been telling me about Mother Meera and something you perceived about her.
Okay, so maybe I'll give the viewers and the listeners a little bit of context about what we're talking about. So over my journey, I came across the concept of an avatar, these beings that have been kind of placed on our planet to help mankind. And there was a number of them that turned up for me. Mother Meera was one, and Amma, the Hugging Saint, was another one. So during my awakening, I went to see Mother Meera twice. I received darshan from her twice. And then COVID hit, and she hadn't traveled really for the last 4 years. So 2 weeks ago, I was on a retreat with my group. There was 30 of us, 31 or 32, but we traveled as a group to see Mother Meera on one of the days. And while I was there, um, something opened up for me where I could see energy. I could perceive people's auras. I could see Mother Meera's aura, and I could see her true nature, which didn't look very human to me. I spoke to Erik about it. We were kind of messaging on Telegram back and forward, and I mentioned that she kind of had this like almost like a praying mantis sort of a look. Her face was golden. She had big black bug eyes, and her aura was green around the top of the head. Then it went up into a kind of an luminous yellow, and then on the very outside or the very top of it, it was red. And I was really, really surprised by what I was seeing. And I could kind of like, shake my eyes and look around the room and get my normal vision back. And then I could go back and look at her, and the same thing would happen. And then I noticed that I could look around the room and I could see people's auras. And most people, they just kind of had a white aura around them, but Mother Meera's was very different. So Eric then decided to go and visit Mother Meera. Yeah, do you want to fill us in what you perceived, Eric?
Yeah. So yeah, I find it interesting. So you were messaging me, you're seeing, and she looks like kind of praying mantis like alien, and that's also the kind of beings that I'm connected to, like on
Okay.
higher realms, and may be one of them in between lives. And so yeah, I looked up Mother Mera, where she's going with her European tour, and it just happened that she is in Praha, which is not that far from where I am. So I could drive there with the car and decided, okay, I'll check her out. Um, yeah, and it was really interesting. So in the beginning, I didn't get anything from her, and it was one of those 1 hour meditations you do with her. It's basically silent, and you're sitting together with 300 other people in a big room, and you don't see much of her because she's so small, and you have to like find her over the heads of the crowd. But yeah, so I really also could feel the after some time. I needed some time to kind of tune in, which is another interesting thing. But I really could feel that kind of vibe I'm also getting from this or astral realm or whatever that I would associate with the praying mantis, or to be more precise, with the white praying mantis. So there seem to be different kinds, which also have a little bit different vibes.
So
And
Eric, just what exactly, when you say praying mantis, are you kind of interpreting? Like, what does that look like to you?
yeah, so it's a being that looks like an upright walking insect, praying mantis, because of like the small stature and maybe the hands, kind of that physical building plan of that. But yeah, like upright walking and having that typical triangular head with the big eyes and some antennas on top.
Okay.
And, and yeah, and there seem to be with aliens, there seem to be those basic building plans of like what is called humanoid, looking like human basically, which are also the grays, or there are the reptilians, which might look like a dinosaur, a dragon,
Okay.
but also mostly upright walking, 2 hands, 2 feet, and then there are also the
Humanoid.
insects. So the basic building plans that we also can see on Earth with like higher life, it seems to be also the case with beings on other planets and other realms. And it's kind of logically, if you think about it, what you need for life and how basically what we also can see in Earth, that even species which are not connected are developing the same kind of building plans for the same kind of functioning.
So you're talking kind of their physiology, right?
Yeah,
Their structure as a
the
kind of humanoid, arms
yeah,
and legs, a head. Yeah.
yeah, right.
Okay.
And that's what we see typically, those this 2 arms, 2 legs, head with eyes on top and stuff like that, which seems to be very common. Of course, this could all be just a projection of ourselves.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
who knows? But yeah, so there are those different kinds which are showing up. And for me, the insect-likes are showing up a lot. Also recently had more dragon-like being showing up, which is also possible. I mean, it's dragon-like. We
Yeah.
have this dragon archetype that we're thinking of, and it's never exactly that, but that kind of like dinosaur, reptilian kind of looking being. And yeah, they also seem to be out there somewhere.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So back to Mother Mirror.
Yeah.
So you were there. What did you perceive?
Yeah, so I also perceived that kind of vibration that I got when I was out of my body and in that realm where I was also that kind of being and welcomed by another of those beings. And she had this kind of vibe about her, which also was a very feminine vibe and just a very clear and loving, vibe. But then also something else was there, and that was the really interesting part for me because I didn't know this other kind of vibration. It's more like I would describe it as archangel or like creator gods kind of vibe, like even higher up than whatever those mantis or mantid beings
Yeah.
are from. And yeah, and that had more of a like male, very dominating feeling to it. So the one side was this like caring female side, and then the other one was this rather strict and right authority from high up. That's how I would describe it.
And and you perceive that as what? As an energy, as a light, as
Yeah, difficult to describe. So I didn't see auras like you, but I got this kind of feeling of difficult to explain, but like creator God, like from a higher realm that's yeah beyond form, and which is also coming in and maybe helping or correcting with form. So I
yeah.
also got an inner vision of something like a big fire, like a cleansing fire. And the
Okay.
association there was to like archangels who are coming in and like correcting things that went wrong with creation, something like that.
Okay. Okay. So I don't know if you're familiar with the kind of language that Mother Meera uses. So she talks about the Paramatman light. So she brings in this light, and according to her, either it's only her or only the avatars can bring this in, the Paramatman light, and it's basically God's light.
Hmm. Yeah, so it might be
Yeah.
that. So she
Yeah.
might have
Yeah.
this connection to that loca where mantis are from, but also this higher thing that's like feels like directly from source.
And yeah, and also the archangels and angels. I know she's like heavily connected with like the goddess Durga, and I think it's like Kali. There's a really amazing video about her talking about them, how they came to her and they gave her certain gifts and the light that she carries at the moment. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, with Kali. So there was also this not just love and light thing, but also this
yeah,
correcting force that might just like in like the angels in history, they're coming down and then they might just burn stuff down to like correct creation. So there was a little bit of that.
okay. So,
And
what?
yeah, and then
Yeah,
also yeah, interesting. So I felt a touch, like a hypnagogic touch, when you feel something is like touching the hairs of your hand. So I felt it on the left hand or left arm, and also something happened with my throat.
okay,
And then towards the end, there was this kind of download or thought that came that basically we are gardeners in like you could say Garden Eden or whatever this reality here is. And yeah, and you might in the beginning you might grow up in this garden, you might play in this garden, and then at some point you become a gardener yourself. And so that felt very true for me. And so maybe you and me here, we are kind of junior gardeners. She's a more senior gardener.
yeah,
And yeah, that was kind of really nice realization and also yeah feeling this energy and it's really such a great fine energy. It's like this chef kiss
yeah, yeah,
transmission.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, very good. Yeah. And did you notice that anything changed in your consciousness after visiting with her?
Well, yeah, I felt that I was changed. So after that, the whole gardener realization and feeling her transmission, yeah, I would say that was changing. Also, a lot of insights that came around that. So one of the insights for me was strange that I didn't feel her transmission when I saw her like on images and other videos and stuff like that.
Same for me. Same. I don't feel anything from her YouTube videos or images. Nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if she has that same like Mantis connection, whatever, then I should like feel that. And I thought strange that I didn't feel that in the beginning. But yeah, a realization for me was that I had a lot of filters. So this whole filter theory of consciousness. So we are all connected to like all of consciousness, but we have a kind of filter that's set here for this incarnation. So we perceive only a few things. And then on top of
Yep.
that, we might also build some filters during our life to be just functioning.
Yep.
And for me, being like this empath and psychic, without knowing it in the beginning, I also built a lot of extra filters. And yeah, and one of those filters is just to prevent me from feeling too much and picking up too much. And so that's something that I'm just learning, is to reduce that filter. And
Okay.
so I noticed that I've been filtering out a lot of transmissions, or people who have a strong transmission. I automatically go into like closing down filter mode because it's too much. And yeah, and so I noticed, oh, I have to open up here that kind of filter to like her transmission.
Okay. Okay. Wonderful. Okay. So let's let's kind of see if we can connect the mantis, the locus and the mantis. So can you talk about what that place is, or who's there and what their roles are?
Yeah, so I think we talked in the last podcast about that. So I had this experience where I tried to get to my astral city, like the place you are in between lives, in meditation, and had this out of body experience where I was there. And for me, it was, yeah, pretty much all white light and then maybe some structures, but not very defined. And in there, I was greeted by one being, and it was just that one being I had interactions with, and that was female, these praying mantis-like beings. And yeah, and we greeted each other in a very specific way, with like touching our antennas, and that's like kissing someone. And then I just yeah, hung out there for an hour, and yeah, and it was really something completely different. So it feels completely different to be there, than to be in this reality. It's difficult to
Hmm.
describe if you haven't experienced it,
Yeah.
but you can be in a completely different reality and it feels completely different. And it felt much light, yeah, less restrictive. And coming back from that felt like, yeah, walking through like thick mud. Everything is like
Yeah.
so much denser and with resistance, and yeah.
Yeah, I understand. So just I'm also going to talk a little bit about Mother Meera's paintings. So Mother Meera has a whole series of paintings that she did, and she shows beings from what I can imagine is the supramental plane, and they have small little heads, long necks, and rectangular bodies, and it's kind of done like an oil painting, but they kind of resemble a sort of an abstract kind of praying mantis, insecty kind of being, triangular body. And when I had the experience of visiting my life in between lives, for me it wasn't white. It was a kind of it was similar to how you describe it. You kind of describe it as all white, but for me it was all blue and very abstract kind of buildings, not a lot of beings there, and the ones that were looked very similar to Mother Meera's paintings. Little small heads, triangle shaped. They kind of glided along. Communication was done through telepathy. There was no conversations, and it felt like home. It really felt
Oh yeah.
like I had loved ones there. These were my friends, my family. And when I came back into my body, it was like horrendous. It was like, oh no, I've lost them all again. Yeah. So I
Yeah,
wonder,
so
is there
really
a connection?
that
Yeah.
that feeling of coming home, that's like so significant. That was the main thing. And yeah, for me, like feeling kind of a little bit wrong in this world, that felt like, oh,
Yeah.
finally, I'm home in my real home. Yeah.
Yeah. With the people that you know and your friends and family. So tell me what happened when you were there.
So for me, not much happened when I was there. It was just this hanging out and like feeling the vibrations and so on in that particular experience. I had another experience where I did a regression back to in between lives on a shamanic retreat.
Okay. Yeah.
And that was for me also really interesting. So, okay, you go back before you were born and all those things. And then the one who was doing, the shaman who was doing the regression, he was doing that with a drum and he was asking different questions. And then your mind would come up automatically with the scenes matching the questions and stuff like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And for me, there also in this experience, I could see this kind of white world and also white buildings, which also had the sense a little bit of a hospital. So there was this kind of sense there is this healing place where you go to in between lives. And it wasn't very, yeah, concrete. It was more like abstract. And the
Yeah.
question is always how do we get to those images? Do we create them just based on a vibration that there is a place that's providing healing and then our mind is creating like a hospital like setting? Or is
Yeah.
it really like that? But it matched very well what you can see in the movie Astral City. Yeah, and then there was the sense or the questions of the shaman. How did you select your life? And for me, that was perceived as a kind of wooden box with small departments in there. And in there were separate lives or life streams, I should say. And one of them was really like blinking and take me, take me, take me. And I was picking that life. And like next to it, the next best alternative would have been being a wealthy dairy farmer in Holland. I don't know how this
Okay.
is connected to anything,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's interesting. And there was also the perception that this life is built on like a series of previous lives. And for me, it seems like we have this kind of main higher self consciousness or whatever, and it splits off in different like sub strands of lives that might also build on each other. And for this life, it's mainly based, or a lot comes through from a life. It seems I had lived 1,200 years ago in the city of Odiana, which is in the west of the Himalayas. It's now lost. Nobody knows exactly where it was, but it's where Tibetan Buddhism started. So the main
Okay.
teachers were called from there to go to Tibet and teach Buddhism. And yeah, and over time, more and more memory fragments came up from that life. And yeah, and I even found a name in the history books where all fragments match exactly. I mean, there's not much written down from that time, basically only a few lines or two paragraphs or something. But yeah, it seems like I was this guy back then who was also deeply into like what's now Dzogchen and Ati Yoga. And the interesting thing is that, yeah, a lot of how I approach the whole meditation thing and the whole awakening thing really matches Ati Yoga. And basically, I did that right from the beginning, right from my first meditations. I did basically exactly that.
Okay. So would you say that in that life you had awakened?
Yeah, for sure. I don't know to which degree, but yeah, I had those
Yeah.
lives where I was a spiritual teacher, like back then, or medicine man, or a magician, and yeah, stuff like that.
Okay, so I'm fascinated by this because I had very similar experiences. So I got to see my past three lives, and I wrote about this in my book. I also got to see where I was in between lives. So when I got to experience them, I was there, right? It wasn't like you just spoke about the regression. So I've done regressions as well, and it's sort of like a kind of a fuzzy, almost like a black and white daydream, not a whole lot of detail. It's almost like your mind is sort of like you've been asked questions by the practitioner and your mind is sort of filling in the gaps, right? And it's just like the story. But when I had the past lives, I had them in lucid dreams. So it felt like I could like, I was fully submerged in the experience. I could walk around, I could touch things, I could pick things up off table. It was realer than real. Was that similar for you? Were you completely submerged in them?
No, I didn't have them in that way. It is real. Also,
Yeah.
all my other experiences, except for a few, haven't been that kind. It's more like small fragments coming out and you kind of zoom in on certain things. But I never had those where I was like completely lucid walking through my past life.
Okay, okay. But when you went to these different locas, was that a little bit different?
Yeah, so I was really there, but kind of in a different state.
Yeah, yeah, like a
Um,
phasing your consciousness there. Yeah,
yeah,
it wasn't like an out of body experience.
it's not like floating out of my body and then being with
Yeah,
my body somewhere else. So for me, it
yeah,
happens more like from one moment to the next. I might be somewhere, and that might be for a very short moment, like being fully there.
yeah.
Um, yeah, and those are most of my experiences. So quite often, yeah, going like in this in-between state, and then suddenly I'm somewhere else. And it's not too long, it's rather short, but it always has some interesting aspects or something like that. Or it might
And
not be
yeah,
that
so
interesting.
so
Yeah.
it's like little snippets you're getting, little
Yeah.
snippets of past lives, other realities. And what do you think? Like, what do you think is happening? Why do they think they want to show you this?
I don't know about those past lives. So there's a whole different kind that I experienced, which seems for me like a simulation or training or something like that. So I had, after my first big near-death-like experience, this half year where every night I had those dreams where I was in other lives.
Yeah,
And yeah, and my dream memory isn't that good. So I might have been walked there fully like you're describing it, but
yeah,
remembering
yeah,
it's another thing. And back at that time, those lives were very traumatizing. So it's kind of a collection of everything that could go wrong in a in a life, including a horrible death that I experienced, and basically every night or every other night. So I just wanted to shut it down and not remember it.
okay,
And that was really difficult. That was one kind of experience I had. And yeah, and it was like being in that life. And when I woke up, I really had to check, oh, this is my body again, and I haven't lost my limbs or stuff like that.
yeah,
And those were horrible lives. And then I had like starting with last year's different experiences where I wasn't experiencing lives and deaths, but what comes after death. And
okay,
typically, I'm meditating or I'm in the same state in sleep. Doesn't matter, you basically get to the same state. And for me, it always started at the moment where you hover over your dead body. And in the beginning, I wasn't even recognizing, hey, what's happening? There's some dude like lying down there, and oh, he seems to be dead. Hmm. Oh, wait, am I this guy? Am I dead? And then it dawned on me, oh, shit, I've just died. And then different scenarios would play out. Like one would be where your loved ones show up, and then some guardian angels or beings that help you show up, get you further along, or another scenario where I was just stuck in whatever I was doing before that. And so, for instance, one interesting one was where I was together with a few other soldier kind of guys in like a bunker. And then something happened. And then I floated up through a big mushroom-like cloud and saw like how a fireball was illuminating the smoke and everything. And me and the others were like floating in this cloud. And that was only for a short moment. And then the next moment, we were back in this bunker. And I thought, hey, wait, we just died. They just blew up the place. And I was trying to tell the other guys, didn't you notice that for a short moment we were like blown up and floating out and everything? And no, 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 everything is like before. We're waiting for whatever our commands and something. And I tried to tell them, look, it's not exactly the same than before. It's like little glitches in the matrix and stuff like that. And oh, wait, I show you something. I can float and float up and float to the ceiling, stand inverted on the ceiling and tell them, can't you see? I mean, you couldn't do that in like real world. We really died. And so I tried to
yeah.
explain them that we died and that we should move on. And they were very stubborn.
So
And
Eric, what was that? Were there was that like a real life? Did that happen in a kind of a war? Were you that actual person? Because to me, it sounds very much like I don't know if you've ever read Bob Monroe's books,
Yeah.
Journeys Out of the Body. Like he used to go into all of these lives where he'd be, on a battleground with a sword, and all of a sudden he'd be speared through the heart and he'd fall down and his body, so that kind of sounds very similar.
Yeah, and it's interesting. So for me, I always was completely the guy who was dying, but those
Yeah.
were scenes from like now. So I got those scenes from the war in Ukraine, from Gaza, and the one I just told was, I think, was Gaza, because when I was floating up, I was seeing the city below and the sea on the side, and that was exactly how it
Okay.
was in Gaza. And also the guys I was blown up with looked like that. But yeah, of course, I'm living here, so I didn't die. That was not one of my lives. And maybe that was just a pure simulation, or my consciousness just attached to that. What
Do you
really
think you could have
happened?
been do you think you could have been doing a soul retrieval, like to help them beings leave?
Yeah, it feels like that.
Yeah.
But I kind of see it as like a training. So in the beginning, I didn't know what happened when I was floating outside of the body, and then noticing, oh, I am the one who has died, and oh, now this is happening. And with like the last one, it's just dying. Okay, next second, I know I've died. I know what to do and do this and that, and might help some people, and then go to the light, and basically that's it.
Okay. And what happened? What happened? Were you able to communicate with them that they had all died, or were they completely asleep to what you were saying?
Yeah, I was trying to convince them, but they were mostly asleep. So I hope I
So
could. So I didn't take anyone with me in like that experience, but I tried to explain it as good as I could for like a long time. And then at some point, I figured, okay, I can't do anything. They won't be coming with me right now. So okay, I go through the light.
okay. So what do you think has happened in that circumstance, right? So they're in a battle, all of a sudden they're killed, their bodies, their astral bodies somehow disconnect from their physical forms, and they still see themselves as being here. They're still aware of one another. They still have a mission to carry out, but they can't realize that they've died. They can't tell. And from what I understand is people can stay stuck in that for years. They could be in that bunker for the next 20,
Or
30
hundreds
years,
of
still
years.
thinking, hundreds of years, still
Yeah.
thinking that they're fighting the enemy.
Yeah. So one thing, the interesting thing is like, even if you think about it, so okay, you're running on a battlefield and then you die and you continue running. Okay, that's one thing. But what happens if like the place physically doesn't exist anymore because it's blown up or something? Then it's just recreated for you, and you're still like in kind of a reality that
An
replaces the current
astral.
one, so that you can do whatever your mind still wants to do. And
Oh,
yeah, and it's and really the interesting thing is those experiences, they were different. It's not like every death process is the same. There are those who are like stuck and they get into their special reality, and others there are just here a little bit, and they have their loved ones and everyone greets them, and okay, yeah, let's go.
okay, so recently I was watching Vikings Valhalla, right? So I imagine Valhalla would be something similar, right? It's like a shared reality
Mm.
for the Vikings. When they die in battle, they all go there, they're celebrated, they live on. So this is obviously like one of these realities, these astral realms that's been produced for that sort of them types of people, and they meet their loved ones and their relatives, and they go drinking beer and sitting around and in this reality. Yeah, so
And
I
it's
imagine that there's lots of them places.
yeah, yeah, and it's pretty much what you expect.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's probably one for Christians, there's probably another one for the
Mm.
Muslims. They've all, yeah, somehow created these realities that they can go and be met by yeah, by similar people who have a similar belief that they do.
Yeah, and I
Okay,
find
so
in,
go
yeah,
ahead.
I find it interesting how you can have that experience and then also, okay, so what about my own past lives? And are those experience I had of my own past lives, are they really my own past life? Or is there something like parallel lives? Did I experience those things that were happening in parallel? Because maybe something of my soul or something was really in one of those who died, and that's how I connected to that. Or is it
Okay.
just a pure simulation by the larger consciousness system to like get a lesson?
Yeah. So it's quite difficult to figure out which one, right?
Yeah. I mean, there
Yeah.
is
It's
some feeling of this was really me because so for me with those experience, there's also a kind of detachment after that. And then there are others which also kind of feel like that was me. So, for instance, I can remember what seems to be my past two lives. So, the first was where I was a soldier, a US soldier storming Nazi Germany in fall of 44. And I had this as an experience while meditating. And at some point, I'm just looking on the ground, and there's someone lying there and seems to be dead. And the usual thing, I don't know who is this. And then I notice it's me. And then I had this, yeah, I really wanted to tell my best friend back then that I died because we all were storming to the front, and I had the experience that I kind of floated up to the front to my best friend back then and communicated with him, showed myself as a ghost or somehow, I don't know how, and told him everything is okay. I just died back there, but everything is okay, and you don't have to worry and look for me, and you don't have to search for me. And then I floated out of that, and it was a really beautiful experience. And yeah, and really had to cry after that, and it really felt like me dying in World War II.
yeah.
And yeah, and then I had another experience where that also felt like my own life, where I killed myself, and that seemed to be in the 70s. And I was like a real hotshot, successful, young in my 20s, and then something happened and everything fell together. And yeah, and my girlfriend or wife, a fiance, yeah, left me, and I lost all my money. And then I was driving to the house I had bought a little bit 2 years or something like before that, that was like taken from me because I was bankrupt.
Wow.
And yeah, and then I killed myself in that house. And that was kind of my last angry act of like, yeah, the new guy who got my house shouldn't have fun, and I killed myself in there, which was quite nasty.
Okay. Okay. Interesting, right? So in some of the lives you had awakened, you had had spiritual awakening, reached certain levels of enlightenment. So if we're kind of looking at this in sort of like linear, right? It's like,
Yeah, it
okay,
doesn't
you
make
would
sense.
imagine it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And similar for me, I had some similar things happened where I became aware of myself running through snow with a rifle in winter camouflage, and putting myself up against a tree with my gun and looking through the sight and being shot by a sniper through the sight of the rifle, and it hit me in the face. It just And then in some of my other experiences, I'm a devotee of the mother in Pondicherry, and I've reached stages of enlightenment already. So it's such a big contrast there. So I wonder, okay, you spoke about what sounded like to me the oversoul, right? And that the oversoul is like choosing all of these different lives for us to experience. So do you think that there might be multiple lives being played out simultaneously? Like, yes, you could be in World War II, storming a beach or a bunker, and also at the same time in another body having a spiritual experience where you're reaching states of enlightenment. Do you think that could be happening?
Well, certainly. I think that's what I said before, that there might be multiple streams or strings of incarnations that build on top of each
Yeah.
other.
Yeah.
Or like, or we just vibrate or have some resonance with the past life, and then when coming into this life or before that, it's decided, oh, I take a little bit of that past life and a little bit of that, and I try a new mix of this and that. And here you go with that new mix, and let's see how this works out. And so it might be that you just take like different previous life experiences, mix them together in a new way for this life. And so you get certain filters, what I said before, this filter theory. So you're disconnected in certain ways from like all of
Yeah.
reality and your sum of experiences that you have. And with your filter, you only have access to certain things that define you.
Or parts of it,
Yeah, yeah,
parts of
parts,
that
yeah.
life. Yeah, fascinating. Because I often wonder about that past life where I was in India, the last one. And like it's like, well, what do I do with it? I noticed when I would come out of them, there was something that needed to be cleared. Like there was some emotional connection or trauma that I got to experience it now, and then it lifted. It was like, okay, every time I would return, I would be sobbing. It would feel like something, ripped my heart out, and I all this kind of, pain and sorrow, and then it would be gone. Um, so I wonder, like, I wonder what's happening there. Why are we given them little glimpses? Is it to clear trauma from previous lives? Is there something that gets cleared?
Maybe, or continue some learning that wasn't finished. That sounds kind of logically to me.
Yeah, because I also did another one time. I did a regression, and I there was a certain pattern in my life, and I was wondering why was I having that pattern, and I found myself in America, and I was a white blonde woman, like a settler who had come in, and I was working on, I had a log cabin and fences around and some horses, and Native American Indians came, and I had a daughter with me, and the daughter ran off into the forest, and I was taken as a prisoner. They put a rope around my neck, and I was taken as a slave, and so I couldn't get back to my daughter. I had all this guilt, and what I did is the first chance that I got, I threw myself off a cliff when I escaped. So it kind of like, I was like, okay, wow, okay, maybe that's why, certain patterns in this life. But did that really happen, or did somehow my consciousness put together that scenario so I could say, okay, well, that's why I am the way I am, and that somehow gives me a way to work with it. So I don't really know.
Yeah,
Is what I'm getting at.
it's really difficult to say. I mean, how consciousness works, and all the things we're talking about might be just imaginations, but then also like everything which is physically might be the same kind of imagination. So
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, there's this,
yeah.
oh, it's all in your mind, but your mind might be much larger than your head, right?
Yeah, totally. I also had an experience where I came across this round tower, okay? And on the stairs were on the outside of the round tower, spiraling up to the top. And I was up the top of the round tower, and every step the whole way down the round tower had two people stood on it, men, women, different costumes. And as I walked down every step, they all put their hands together and acknowledged me. And I was walking down looking at them. And I suddenly realized that I had been all of these people. Somehow they were all connected to me, and they were all acknowledging the work that I had done. But again, what do you do with that, right? Is it just a
Mm.
collection of all of my previous lives? Do they all somehow exist simultaneously? Is there access to them?
Yeah, I find one thing interesting that seemingly you can also influence your other lives from this life. So I don't have an own experience of that, but some are telling those stories where they heal something in this life or trauma, and then it's
Yeah.
or healed in the past life. And it may be that we are just having all those things going on simultaneously, and they are somehow connected. So there are small bridges between those lives, which might be like have more or less filters, and then they interact with each other. and maybe we are all playing a life where we all living all those lives and trying to make them better and better. And then you solve some trauma in this life, then this life gets better, then you solve some trauma in that, and that might get better. And then maybe it's like that's all happening at the same time until every life is
Sure.
perfect or something like that.
Sure, sure. And it makes well, okay, so if we take the like, there is only one consciousness, right? Dreaming itself into all of our lives, right? So in that circumstance, then yes, it does make sense that we are playing all of these lives simultaneously, right? And I guess then this whole idea of like enlightenment or ascension, right, where we figure it out, we break free of the karmic wheel, right? But do we really progress anywhere until everybody gets it and progresses?
Well, maybe it's a little bit of that gardener thing. So
So we have to come
once
back and help.
once you have made enough progress, then you're more like a gardener in reality than like just someone who just plays but doesn't tend to the garden.
Okay, so what does that gardener role look like to you now? How does that, what, like, how is that manifesting now for you?
Well, I guess it's this kind of spiritual teacher, healer thing.
Yeah, yeah, helping other people to
Yeah.
to awaken, to find their own truth. Yeah, very interesting. Very interesting. So is there any other experiences that you'd like to talk about?
Yeah. So, yeah, one of those death experiences was also very significant for me. And here I didn't experience after the death, but what's leading up to the death. And that was being captured as a soldier in Ukraine. And I don't know if I was a Russian or Ukrainian or something, but like our group of soldiers, we had been captured. And then our captors started to torture us for fun. And that was a really interesting experience because I was experiencing what it's like to be like tortured to death. And I didn't feel any of the pain, but just the psychological stuff,
Yeah.
where at a certain point you noticing, oh, I won't survive that. And then all you're thinking about is your family. And that's the one side. And then I also did experience it from the other side. And that was the really interesting thing, the real learning lesson, because I experienced how it is to get into like this rush of hurting other people and having all this power and destroying them and yeah, getting real joy out of that. And that was like
Wow.
that, yeah, the fact that I could feel that way and have that somewhere in myself, that
Yeah.
was really whoa. Yeah, and it took some time to recover from that experience.
Wow. Because we've all been the abused and the abuser, right? In many lifetimes. We've played all, both sides. So what do you think happened? So you got to experience both sides. Yeah, like you got to go there and be both parties. What do
And
you
I
think?
mean, that's just a learning experience, really.
Yeah,
That's pretty obvious that yeah, if you experience that, then there's learning in that. Or the other experiences where I caused a fatal traffic accident, and then I got to see how this impacted all the other people, and just things that I wouldn't be thinking about. So of course you die and the other one dies and stuff like that, but also the people who were just seeing the accident and it looked horrible and they were traumatized and then their life was affected with that trauma. And yeah, and you get to see all those ripples that go out. And yeah,
so it's like the butterfly effect.
yeah.
Incredible, incredible. So, do you think this is something that can, happen to a lot of people going through their awakening? They get to see, the dark side as well.
Yeah, I think it depends. So there are some people who are really prone to that stuff and others it doesn't seem like that. And Also with different spiritual traditions, like in Zen, they tell you, oh, don't focus on that, just sit and meditate because you're naturally
Mm.
enlightened and you just need to sit in that. And others go in like all the astral adventures that you could have. And those are the traditions. And then there are the matching people for those traditions, I think. And there are some who just sink deeper and deeper and they don't have like all those spectacular things going on. And I wouldn't say that they are less enlightened or anything. It's just yeah,
Yeah,
different paths.
different path. Your path seems to be very similar to mine, like so similar. All of the crazy
The
astral
crazy stuff.
travels. Yeah, I had something similar where I got to experience what it was like for a cow to be slaughtered. I got to feel its anxiety, its pain before it went through
Mm.
the whole process. And then actually, funny enough, I was told after the experience that I needed to stop eating meat. So yeah, the next day I stopped eating meat, which was yeah, very strange experience. Yeah, so fascinating,
Al-
fascinating conversation. Yeah.
Also connected to being animals just for short moments, but fully being an eagle who just caught some prey or like other beings. But yeah, for me, those were always like short uh, vignettes that I get when I'm there for a few seconds.
Yeah, I've had to be in animals as well. I remember being in a hammerhead shark swimming with hundreds and hundreds of other sharks and actually knowing that my mind, it was like, oh, I just move my body with my mind, just to speed up. I think and the body of the shark moves. And I remember kind of looking up and seeing, hundreds of silhouettes above me as hammerhead sharks. So yeah, it's amazing what we can do. And also I remember actually driving one day as well and my consciousness shooting up out of my body and being in the body of a bird of prey that was flying, several meters up above and being here and in the consciousness of the hawk or whatever it was
Mm.
at the same time. So yeah, it's amazing, really amazing what can happen. Yeah.
Yeah, especially this being in other beings, which
Yeah.
can be different than completely being them. So there were those like things we have been talking before, which is like you are completely that. And then others where you just enter like the consciousness stream of other beings and perceive what they
Yes.
are perceiving. And yeah, also had that for like seconds where I'm just in somebody and see what they are seeing.
But you're seeing it from your perspective, right? Not from the perspective of like an animal or
No, I'm for instance, I'm suddenly in a person that's
yeah,
like
yeah.
in LA and then just see for a short moment like the streets of LA. Or I might be just in an alien and see a spaceship. So yeah, one funny experience was when yeah, I was meditating and then suddenly I find myself sitting at the edge of a pool and I had one of my legs dangling in the pool and it was nice and was chilled and sitting there. And then I was looking up and it wasn't like a normal outdoor scene or like a normal indoor pool, but like a big dome and it had windows in the dome. And then I looked through the windows and I saw space. And it was distinctly different from just the night sky because it's yeah, like much deeper and more stars and stuff like that. And then I looked down on my leg that was dangling in the water and it was like small, like thin and gray. And I looked into the pool and there was a whale and several dolphins. And there was not just one pool, but several ones. And there were all whales and dolphins in there. And under the water, they were connected. And then it dawned on me that, like, oh, I'm like one of those gray aliens, and I'm sitting here on a huge spaceship that's transporting dolphins and whales. And
Wow.
whatever that means, yeah. So I heard from someone else who has like an alien connection to those small grays and Sue Walker, I think, yeah. and she told that, oh yeah, they are transporting some of our whales and dolphins to other planets just to seed them there. And yeah,
Like a zoo on a different planet.
yeah. Maybe I just experienced that, and that's yeah one of the more spectacular things that you could see.
Wow. I mean, you there's so much to explore in this, right? There's so many different avenues you could go down. Yeah, it's fascinating. Yeah, to
Yeah,
think that your consciousness could, kind of teleport into the consciousness of an alien and be in a different reality. Yeah, really, really. I don't know if you watched the podcast we did with Casey Clark, where she sees. Did you watch that one? No, she's got a connection to ETs as well, and she has a crystal, and she gets her camera and she zooms in, and all of a sudden these aliens faces start to appear, and she displays all of the images of them, and she can communicate with their personality, and she displays it all up on her website. That's a fascinating one as well, actually. Yeah, you might enjoy actually looking at some of her stuff, Casey. Big connection to ETs. So yeah, so it seems that we can kind of go down that rabbit hole of like jumping timelines and having these kind of, would you say it's sort of like remote viewing other realities?
yeah, I guess like so. My theory a little bit about the whole astral and remote viewing is that there is some realm where all the information of what's happening in realities is like mirrored, and you can access that realm. And if you do a classic out of body exploration where you just float out of your body, you're kind of in the same environment, but it's often not
Yeah,
exactly the same environment. And
yeah.
it's kind of you're accessing not really this reality, but like an image of that. And I think it's the same thing with remote viewing. You're just using different senses. And for remote viewing, it might not be going fully there, but just like putting your hand into like a box and just feeling, oh, that feels like that and that feels like that. And then you put it together and you get an image of that. And I think with our consciousness, we can always access that realm that has all this information mirrored into it. And yeah, and do this with different modalities, being like fully in there or just with different senses, and have it like, yeah, all the different senses like touch and taste and also visual.
So it's like the Akashic records, they would call it, right? We can
Yeah.
we can kind of get into that
Yeah.
that realm and access past and future, probable futures, and yes, okay. So
But
you
then
also spoke about, yeah, go ahead.
the interesting thing would be then, okay, then there is this realm where all this information is, but isn't that a realm then on itself where life could develop that's just in that realm again? And then what are the other realms in comparison to that? And what is like real and what is just the Akashic
Yeah, yeah.
image of that? And basically, maybe everything is just such a projection of information in some way or another.
Yeah. Did you watch the interview I did with Tom Campbell? Tom, no, not in the interview I did with him, but I heard Tom talk about these where he would kind of find himself in these databases, and it took him a long time to figure out that he was in a replica.
Mm.
Yeah, by just going up, he had to question, and he was like, "Oh, okay, this doesn't seem to be, it's slightly off." So yeah, I guess that can happen, right? Where you
Mm.
could mistake it. You could be stuck in there for a while, not knowing that it was like a database or a projection of the future or a thread that
Yeah.
could be stored in there.
And yeah, and you
Fascinating.
could be just going there to explore it or be there
Yeah,
like in those afterlife experiences where just put
yeah.
into like such a simulation. But then,
Uh,
yeah, the question is what is really then a simulation and what is reality? And isn't this reality like just a bigger simulation?
it's just a bigger simulation. Yeah, more kind of more real. It's more consistent. One day leads into the next day. You spoke about healing as well. The ability to start doing healings opened up for you. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, Eric?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, so for me, it all started not that long ago, last year, when I visited some hands-on Reiki-like energy healing course. And and then an interesting thing happened. So I was walking in the woods around where we were doing the thing, and then I saw something from the edge of my eyes, like at the tree. And then I looked there, and there was nothing there. Then I looked in another direction, and there was still something there. And that for me is kind of the sign of spirits that sometimes show up like at the edge of the vision. And so I
Yeah.
went over to the tree and asked, okay, there seems to be a spirit here, and what do you want? And there was the answer, like telepathically, or the other thought came into my mind. Oh, I'm just here. I'm very interested in what you're doing there, and can I come with you? And so there was then really the feeling that something was coming with me, and like also being with me in that energy healing course. And then after that, really a lot of synchronicities happened where everything was about trees and tree spirits. And so I guess, that was a tree spirit that just wanted to come with me. And and so I then developed my own energy healing where I also include those tree spirits.
Okay, so let's talk about the tree spirits. So
Yeah.
what are they? What are they? What is a tree spirit?
So yeah, it seems to be that they are the collective soul of the trees. So it seems like trees are more collective beings in the sense that groups of the same kind of tree share a common consciousness.
Yeah.
And that consciousness is here like on Earth and like experiencing things, but much slower and not as direct as we do. But there is consciousness. And then there's also, they have the same kind of process where there's also a higher soul or oversoul or higher self for them, where they also have their own like astral dimension. And and those beings seem to be very powerful. I mean, if you think about it, how influential and powerful trees are, because basically they
Yeah.
shape our landscape, and all the life or much of our life is happening like in between the ground, and trees and stuff is living in the trees, and what's happening under the ground, it's all connected with the
Yeah, they give shade and yeah, shelter. Yeah.
and lots of other life lives in symbiosis with that. And
Yep.
so seems to be a very strong and influential force if you connect to that. And then there are of course different traditions who are working with those tree spirits. One tradition I find very interesting is that of Dusty Miller. So he's the last like surviving shaman of an old tradition that, as he tells it, goes back 10,000 years in England, of native people who have been living in the woods like long before the Celts and the Romans and everyone got there.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and they were living in the woods, and they were working with the tree spirits. And one of the traditions they developed is that the shaman is guided to a tree and then guided to cut a branch of the tree and do certain things with it, and then create what's called live wood, which is a kind of piece of wood which has a little bit of this, or a clone of the soul in it from the tree where it was taken from. And and they are basically like magic wands and used for healing. And I can show you
So like
some.
a like a wizard's
Yeah,
staff,
right.
right? Okay, okay, okay,
So
yeah.
that would be one, for instance, which I made,
Okay.
or a smaller one that's from Dusty Miller. That's from a 2,000-year-old tree.
Okay. So I've seen these before, these little kind of weird shaped. So what do you do with them?
Well, you work with them like with the magic wand, and usually they have pointy end and rounded end, and with the pointed end you can do energy.
So it's funny. I have this device which is called a healing wand, right? And it's made of I mean, I would say it's just stainless steel, but I don't know if you've ever watched the Marvel comics where they talk about vibranium. It's like
Yeah.
this. So apparently it has the properties of vibranium and you can do healings with it. You point it at certain things. And so, I mean, it must be some connection, right? That's something that we can. So what is it? What is it? Does the stick actually contain something, or is it a way for us to work our consciousness like a tool or a device?
Yeah, I think it's a way to connect with that kind of consciousness and build up some resonance and use that to some aim. Yeah.
Okay, so what can you do with the wand?
Well, basically everything, if you like connect it in the right way with your consciousness. So the interesting thing is, so yeah, there are those like traditional looking pieces or this one that you can use to work on someone's aura, stuff like that, or like those which are like more classic magic wands. And the interesting thing is those they're called dryads. So the three spirits in general are called dryads, and also those life woods are also sometimes called dryads. They are used by ritual magicians who are not in that shamanic tradition, but in like Western ritual magic traditions, and they use it as magic wands. And they say like those from Dusty Miller, like the traditional ones with the three spirits. I mean, you can have all kinds of magic wands, but they say they are especially powerful. So yeah, who knows how it works and how it's connected, but there seems to be some kind of yeah way how you create some resonance with consciousness to achieve something.
Okay, and have you carried out any healings? Like what sort of results have you had?
Yeah, so most of my healings turn out to be psychological or in the direction of
Okay,
awakening. So I had some physical ones, maybe one major miracle, physical miracle healing. Always difficult to say, was I the guy who caused the miracle healing? Yeah, what I noticed is really for me, it's more like, or it's less like some body ailment or something like that. It's more like helping people with getting into awakening or
yeah.
working through their stuff that's blocking them from awakening.
So like traumas in their system, you
Yeah,
help sort of like yeah, emotional releases or yeah.
yeah, right.
Okay,
And so,
fascinating.
and
Yeah.
yeah, I'm doing that, the classical hands-on healing, which can take like an hour, where I go over all the body parts and there might be some energy flowing, and then traumas and other stuff is stored in the body, and that then gets unlocked and flows through, and people might then also have some other experiences when stuff gets flowing, like they perceive also past life or past life traumas and stuff like that.
Okay. And how do you see that? Like what's when you're doing a hands-on healing and you're working with the energy or the aura, like how are you kind of like how do you know when something has been cleared or healed? Do you get a knowing? Do you sense it? Do you see it? Do you hear it? What way does it communicate?
Yeah, for me, it's mostly intuition. So I have the feeling that I should put my hands there and how long I should
Yeah, very
put
simple.
it put them there. I don't get like the aura where I see, oh, here in that organ, that's like yellow instead of blue or something like, and that means that and that. I don't get that. I'm mostly like not thinking and just doing. And sometimes things can come into my mind that are somehow relevant also to that person. And then I tell them, and that might also help with something. And
Okay. Yeah, it's yeah, go ahead.
and yeah, that's one modality. And then the other one I developed more recently, where I was thinking, oh, can't I just do like a shorter version of that and like more intense? And so I developed kind of a transmission and also energy healing. I think it's very similar to yours. So in the beginning, I go through all the chakras and bring in the white light and clear the chakras and all those things. And I noticed
Yeah.
when I'm doing that, then I'm really getting some input of what's wrong with the chakra or with that life area, whatever that's connected with that chakra. And I kind of feel it
Wow.
within myself.
Yeah.
Then usually it's, yeah, I'm clearing it up and let the white light flow through everything and do that from the top to the bottom. And then at the bottom, I activate the Kundalini energy that brings the whole thing up again. And that's can be perceived as very energetic. And that's, yeah, more like a Shakti part. And then I concentrate on the top of the head. And then that's more like a Shiva part, where it's then more like from all this energetic thing, integrate that and get into a deeper knowing of, yeah, like a deeper state.
Fabulous, fabulous how it just unfolded, and that kind of came as a knowing, as just it just developed by itself.
Um, yeah, it was just popping in different like informations and, oh, I could do it that way, I could do it that way, and
Yeah,
yeah,
experimenting.
and and experimenting a little bit, but it was pretty much complete the first time I tried it. I'm just tweaking little things. And yeah, and the main thing seems to be that it puts people into like deeper states
Yeah,
of
yeah,
consciousness, and it
fabulous.
somehow transmits my kind of calmness to them. So that's the most common thing.
Yeah, amazing. Is there anything else, Eric, before we go? Another
Oh, yeah,
fabulous.
just wanted to mention
Yeah.
those stones here, which were materialized by Kai Mugar, also one of the interesting things. So I went to a physical medium called Chi Mugar in Germany, and he
Okay.
is one of those guys who connects with spirits on the other side, and then they do physical stuff during the seances. And that includes like moving things around, levitation, and he always manifests like those little stones, and they're coming out of his eyes and his hands. And
Okay, fill me in on that one, right? Yeah. So can you give us another look on the camera?
yeah, so it looks like that. It's like 1 centimeter, and that would come out, for instance, from his eyes, but also all other body openings and his hands. And yeah, and he has like a dozen of those coming out from his eyes, and you can see it. So his wife, she's like having a flashlight and showing it with light. You can see like how it forms under the eye and comes up and then drops out, and then another one drops out. And yeah, and try sticking those things under your eyes, right?
Wow. And
And
just really quickly, just for anyone who's listening on the podcast, right? Eric is holding up a stick with no bark on it, right? Looks like it's been, yeah, kind of like sanded, right? Looks
yeah,
really
cool.
smooth. And on one of the notches, it has almost like, I don't know, it looks kind of like a gemstone or a tiger's eye or something like that. It's kind of a gray color. I mean, if you want to go and find a YouTube video and yeah, have a look at it there. So that's astonishing, right? Like
Yeah,
that
and
somebody is pulling them stones from their eyes.
yeah, and for me that was really something that, yeah, connected me to like the whole metaphysics again, because for me at the beginning of this year I had this shift into the non-knowing where everything falls away. And
Mm,
for me also, like the feeling of wanting to connect with like all the stuff we've been talking today fell away. And it
yeah,
seemed completely stupid to, why would you do all this woo and all those things, because ultimate what's there. But yeah, but I already booked some shamanic retreats and courses and stuff, and then I thought, okay, I already booked that and it seems stupid, I go there. And that kind of reconnected me again with the magic. And yeah, and for me one really deep experience has been that with Kai Mügge, because I could really perceive the spirits around him. And also something interesting, also wrote it to you, is that with his seances, I get into a space of blue light. And you told me that your in between life space is blue. It doesn't seem to be the same thing. It's just blue. It kind of, for me, now shows up when I connect to a certain feeling that's also connected with the same spirits I got with his seance. And I can now reconnect to that and get into that blue light thingy again. Yeah, and it seems to be all connected to certain emotions. So for me, I'm just exploring how can I work with emotions and also open up that filter with emotions. Because if you go into like awakening and everything falls away, you don't have much need for
Yeah.
emotions because everything is just happening and why would you have some emotions? But yeah, for me, that has been really interesting that you can use emotions to connect to like other realms and then also feel the emotions from spirits there. So I also experienced that at some stages when you do that seance thing, then they want to talk through you, and then I can feel the emotions of whatever being that's talking through me. And yeah, and that's also something I got into is like spirit or house clearing, where I do like a ritual setting and I connect myself with whatever is there. And there might be some like soul or whatever stuck there. And that's then coming through me. And I try to like, send it into the light and help balance out the place.
Fabulous. Fabulous. Mind blown. So the guy who's pulling the stones out of his eyes, what's his name again?
Chi Mugar.
Chi Mugar. Okay.
Yeah, I
Okay.
can send you
Okay.
the details.
Yeah, we'll maybe link to that if people want to find him. I might look him up myself. I'm very interested to hear it. And what's the significance of him giving you that stone? Does it contain something? Has it got a
Uh,
transmission?
No, that's nothing special because he manifests like 100 of those stones, and then everyone who participates gets several of them. He also manifests a big gem that's like that size that comes from a blue spark of light in the air right in front of him. Also interesting that this is blue again. And he usually
Yeah.
gives that to some person who is also doing seances and is building this network of crystals that are all connected. Yeah.
Wow. This is fascinating, really amazing. Um, yeah, another incredible conversation, Eric. Thank you. So again, I'll put links to your if people want to reach out to you, I'll put a link down below to your email. Did you get a website? You were talking last time that you were
I will
working on
have
a
it up in
website.
time.
Okay, but even if it's at a future date, I'll try and get it onto the videos. Eric, thank you so much. Well, another great conversation. Really enjoyed it. Fascinating stuff we covered today.
Yeah, as always, like having fun.
Yeah, a lot of
Chat with
fun.
you.
Yeah, a lot of fun. A lot of fun. So thank you to the viewers and listeners. It's been great. Eric, thanks a million. Take care.
Bye.
Bye bye.
This has been the Endless Possibilities Podcast, where the journey of spiritual awakening and energy healing unfolds. Garrett is a lifelong seeker of truth, a spiritual teacher and author, and it's his passion to delve into the profound world of consciousness. We hope you've enjoyed the show, and we hope you've gotten something from it. If you did, make sure to like, rate, and review. We'll be back soon. But in the meantime, the podcast is available on YouTube and all the major podcasting platforms. Find us on Instagram at _mother_force. Take care, and we'll see you soon on the Endless Possibilities Podcast.